Ready to go? Okay. So today, with Hashem's help, we're going to finish the 5th chapter of Megillat Esther. The 5th chapter is kind of like the halfway point. Up until the end of the 5th chapter, things are not looking very good. So all this trouble that's happening. We get to the 6th chapter, everything starts to unfold, everything starts to change. We briefly touched on verses 12 and 13 in our previous class. I want to reiterate those psukim and give you a little more depth. And then we'll move into the wicked wife, Zeresh, and her advice. Pasuk Yud Beis, Vayemer Haman. Haman is now talking, really we could start in verse 11, even though we studied this previously, just to reiterate. Vayisaper lahem Haman es kveid ashrei. Haman is relating all of his glory, all of his honor. V'rei vanov, and his many children. We talked about that. V'eskov eis kol asher gidlei hamelech, all of the wondrous things that the king has done for him. V'eis asher nesoi al asarim v'avdei hamelech, and the way he was elevated from above all of the ministers and all the other servants of the king. So the Mefarshim say that there's Haman's success. First, his success was his wealth. He made a lot of money. And then after his money, he had a family, but that was all about Haman. Really, you should have family first and then wealth after. But for Haman, it was all about Haman. So his main thing was he should have a lot of money. Then when he had a lot of money, he wasn't happy. He needed to have a family to make him feel good. So that's when he set out to build his family. And he had a lot of children, many, many wives. And then came Haman's fame, his meteoric rise, his political career. And now Haman is so famous, more so than all of the other officers and ministers. He is the number one politician. He's at the top. And he tells all this. He's relating all this. Why is he talking about this? So the Beino Moshe Alshich says like this. Haman had decided he's got to get rid of Mordechai. Now. What's the problem? Mordechai's got a death sentence against him, together with all the Jews. It's a couple of months. You can't wait 11 months. They're all going to be dead. The Jewish people are going to be a forgotten piece of history. They're all going to be finished off. Mordechai, their leader amongst them. Haman has to justify why it is that he cannot stand to have Mordechai live another day. So he has to talk about all the wonderful things that he has. And then when he's finished talking about all the wonderful things he has, he's going to say, and take a look in verse 13, V'chol says that all of this, einena shoiveli, it's all worthless. I can't even enjoy any of the gifts I have. I can't enjoy my money, I can't enjoy my family, I can't enjoy my fame and my fortune as long as Mordechai is still alive. So really, he's making the case here as to why he needs to act immediately. He has so many beautiful things in life, so many good things to enjoy, he can't enjoy anything because Mordechai spoils the day all the time. The Alshich says like this. He says, Haman knew he was making his case. Remember, he came home to get advice, not just comfort. He trusted his wife Zeresh. She would have number one at heart. She would take care of him more than everybody else. And because he knew his wife was his best friend, then she would look out for him. And there was other people, Kol Oyhavav, all the other people who loved him. So it was his children, maybe other people who loved him. He needed to make the case. So Choshash, he says, they'll say to me, Maza meharta, what's your rush? Why do you have to get rid of Mordechai now? Hamtan ad Yud Gimel Adar, wait until the 13th day of Adar, and then you get rid of him. Mordechai will just be as one of them, another statistic, another dead body, another number. So therefore, Haman begins by talking about all the wonderful things he has. Kol hagdulos, all of the things that he's achieved. And he says all of this is meaningless. If I just see Mordechai, in a moment, it all dissipates. I'm sick to my stomach, I can't enjoy anything of it. And this is why, Vayisaper, he tells, the narrative begins with verse 11, Vayisaper, because in verse 10, Vayisapa Haman, Haman contains himself, he restrains himself. He's not going to react, he's going to wait to get home. And then from verse 11 until verse 13, Haman has a talking part. Okay, the spotlight's on Haman, Haman's talking. And starts off with the words, Vayisaper loi, he began to tell them. And then the end, so he begins, here's where the quotation marks begin, Vayisaper loi, he tells them. And Haman's talking. And then it concludes in verse 13, V'chol zeh, and all of this, it's worthless for me. I can't even enjoy it. In the words of the Alshich, Haman said, Kol ha'mailes v'hagdolos b'telim v'nehapachim le'evil. all the wondrous things, all the nice things I have, it's meaningless. It all turns into mourning for me. The mourning gets a U added to me. So it's not mourning for me. It's not happiness. I don't have any joy in life. And he says there are three things generally that gladden the heart of a man. What are they? His finances, his success and financial success, his family, and his fame. So Haman said, he listed all three things. My finances, my family, my fame. He says, and it's all, I get an F, a failing grade, because I can't enjoy finances, family, or fame as long as this guy's still alive. So Roiv Ashrei, and that's what we see. Take a look now, you'll see it's Roiv Ashrei, that's the wealth. The next words in the pasuk in verse 11 are V'roiv Bonov, and his many children. That's the family. And finally, the Eis Kol Asher Gidloi HaMelech, all the things that the king had done to magnify, to glorify him, and how he was raised above all others. And he says, you can't really reasonably expect me to wait 11 months now. I can't be miserable for 11 months. I need satisfaction. I need happiness now. And this guy Mordechai is in the way of my happiness. I need to get rid of him. And that's why he says, if you take a look in B'chol Ze'in and Eshev, down to verse 13 again, he says, B'chol eis asher ani roya es Mordechai. Every time I see this SOB, every time I see this Jew, it kills me. It rips my heart out. I can't be happy. What's B'chol eis? So I said, don't look at him. Don't look at him. The guy's sitting there in the parliament.
But not just see him sitting.
Very good, Manny. Very good. Here, Haman goes on to say, not only I see him B'chol eis, asher ani roya es Mordechai ha-Yehudi, which Imam Loyas quotes Mefarshim saying, it was his Jewish identity. Can't stand it. The guy's not ashamed to be a Jew. So stick his payas in my face. I have to see that he's Jewish. He has to self-identify as a Jew. Can't he just, melt into the background? And then he's sitting there, Bashar HaMelech. He's sitting there in the king's gate. So the Alshach says, once upon a time he didn't bow to me. But at least he showed me a little deference. Now he's got this Jewish chutzpah. Now he doesn't even stand up for me. Now it's like I'm not there. He ignores me entirely. Daddy says I can't stand at all. To such a degree, to ignore me? That's the point. Very good. Asher Yoshev, that he's still sitting over there. And therefore, I have to do what I have to do. Now Haman goes on to say, Vayemer Haman, Afloi Hevia Esther Amalka, Im HaMelech El HaMishta Asher Asaso. 1 second. Now Haman's talking about the party. But according to the Alshach, all of the things he discussed in verse 11 are making the case for why he can't wait. So what's verse 12? Why is he relating this business as Lo Hevia Esther Amalka Im HaMelech? Esther, the queen, didn't bring me together with the king. El HaMishta Asher Asasa, to the party, the Mishta, the feast that she made. Ki Maisi, only me. What's his point? Because they're going to say to him, Haman, it's a little bit thin ice you're walking on. After all, we think the queen has a relationship with Mordechai. So if you try to eliminate Mordechai too quick, let's maybe not overreach. We have them done. So in 11 months they're finished. And 13th of Adar, they're all dead. Maybe just bide your time. So sometimes if you overplay your hand, you can end up in trouble. So Haman now says, I know what you're thinking. You're going to tell me, just sit pretty, bide the time, wait until the day comes, and then it will be finished. He says, I can't do that. Why? Because I don't have to do that, because take a look, he says. I'm so trusted, not only by the king, by the queen also. She also trusts me, because remember we talked about previous class, she wants to ask for something really big from the king. I don't know what it is yet. The king himself doesn't know what it is yet. But all I do know is that in order for her to make her request, who did she need sitting at the table? Me. See that? That's how important I am. Even the queen needs me. So there's no reason to think that Mordechai will have a better end. And then you say to him, well, maybe the queen's setting you up. Maybe it's not as you think. He said, what are you talking about? There's not only today. Tomorrow I'm also called. You see? It wasn't that she set me up today. She really needs me to make the request, because tomorrow she's making the request, and then she wants to make sure I'm there too. And this way, now Haman has, so to speak, all of his bases covered. He made the case. What's Haman looking for? He's looking for advice how to get rid of Mordechai now. Now. That's his plan now. Whatever he has achieved until now is not enough for him. He's got genocide plan, no more Jewish people, they're all going to be history. That's great, that was good yesterday. Now Haman says, I have a new problem. Mordechai himself has to be eliminated now. I have to get rid of him. And so, after knowing all this, because, and that's what Haman finishes off, all of this is worthless for me. I cannot simply go on with life, because until I get rid of Mordechai, I will never ever be able to enjoy another good day. Now, it's interesting that in these psukim that unfold as Haman is speaking to his family, he never mentions Mordechai not bowing. That was the whole reason he began the whole plot. Never mentions it. Why not? Why doesn't?
Position is more important.
So the Al-Sheikh says it's embarrassing for him. He's like, he didn't bow to me. He made that argument already. Now he's saying, well, this is really personal. He said, it's not me. It's not about me. This is, he doesn't, it's just his existence. Forget about it, doesn't, I care if he bows to me. Haman's not going to admit that the fact that everybody bows, but one guy didn't bow, that's who bothers me. There was like this joke out there once upon a time that Assad, Yamach Shemo, the father, was elected in the democratic elections in Syria. And he won 99.9%. And one guy voted against him. And he said, who is the guy who voted against me? I want to know his name right now. One guy didn't bow. What do you care? Right? So Haman's embarrassed to say that, even from his own wife and children. He has a little self-respect. He has to maintain his dignity. So he says, it's not bowing. Mordechai's bowing. It's nothing. It's a cockroach to me. But he gets on my nerves. I can't stand him. And because he bothers me so much, I have to get rid of him. Okay, so now we have to step back for a moment, and I'm going to remind you what Rashi said on verse 13 about Einenu Sheveli, and then we're going to go in and fill you in with some of the background. Rashi said on the words Einenu Sheveli, Eini chosh lakol hakavod shali. All of this honor that I have doesn't really mean very much to me. Why? B'chol eised, every time when I see this guy Mordechai. So obviously, this from Rashi's perspective, this needs to be elucidated. Like, what was it that bothered Haman so much? It's because he saw Mordechai, like that he's going crazy. He actually is risking his life. He's risking everything just to get Mordechai. Is it really worth it? Like, what got under his skin so badly? So Rashi here says, you take a look in the Gemara, Maseches Megillah, and you'll see that Mordechai would indicate a document, which according to some opinions was on a shoe, written on the bottom of a shoe. And he would lift up the shoe, which is, like I said in last class, till today in the Middle East, lifting up the bottom of your shoe is considered to be a shame, right? Embarrassment. It probably comes from then. So he would lift up a shoe, and on the shoe it said that he had sold himself as a slave to Mordechai for a couple of loaves of bread. And this is because when they were both appointed heads of military legions, Mordechai and Haman went out to battle. Haman spent all his money, Mordechai didn't, and then there was no food left. Okay, so I want to share the Gemara with you. And then I'll also share the Yalkut Shimoni, because the Yalkut Shimoni has some details the Gemara doesn't have. It's all, from one common source, as they say. But so the Gemara says like this. It's a Gemara Maseches Megillah on Daf Tez Vav Amid Aleph on the bottom. And the Gemara says, V'chol ze in Sheveli, Amar Rabbi Eliezer, Amar Rabbi Chanina. Rabbi Eliezer said in the name of Rabbi Chanina, B'shah Shara Haman es Mordechai, when Haman saw Mordechai sitting Yeshiv B'shar HaMelech, Amar Lo, he said, Kol ze eini shave li. All this is not worth anything to me. So some of the commentaries add in a missing sentence here. That's what the Hagos Habacha the Marsha added in. And it's like a question. And because Mordechai is sitting there, everything is worthless. Like, really? Because he's sitting there? So what? So he's sitting there. So the Gemara, in other words, in our Gemara, there's no question here, but it's almost like a comment. But the Gemara seems to believe it has to have, the Mefarshim believe it has to have like a question. It's to be like incredulous here. Like, and really? And that was such a big deal? That's what he couldn't stand? Why did he respond? Why did he react in this way? And the Gemara answers that this is Kid Rav Chizda. This is like the teaching of Rav Chizda. The Amar Rav Chizda, Zeba bepur zebuli, Zeba bepurzbuti. No. So Pirzbuli, what does Pirzbuli mean? Buli, Rashi says, is Lashain. Let's go to Rashi. Rashi says, Ba Pirzbuli. Mordechai ba elav betainas oisha. Mordechai came with the complaint, so to speak, of a wealthy person. You owe me. You owe me. I'm the wealthy person. And Haman came, ba betainas oini. He came like a poor person. What happened is, Rashi says, Shemachar Haman as atzmi leMordechai. Haman sold himself as a slave to Mordechai. Kaidim lachein yomim rabim bekikrei lechem. Many, many, many moons earlier. He sold it for a few loaves of bread. Buli, Rashi says, is lashon oisher. It comes from the terminology of wealth. Like it says, V'shavarti es goin uzchem elu bulois shabi Yehuda. So we have this Gemara, the psukim in the Torah, the curses that speak about, I'll break goin uzchem, the might of your pride. Who is this? And the Targum says, this is the bulois shabi Yehuda. So the bulois means the wealthy people. So we understand from this that the word buli comes from the terminology of wealth. Okay, so the Gemara says Mordechai comes with wealth, and Haman comes with tainas purs buti. What's purs buti? So buti, Rashi says, is lashon aniyus. It comes to the term of poverty, as it says v'have tavitenu, which means the Gemara over there speaks about giving a loan, and giving a loan, naturally, who needs a loan most of the time? The poor person. So v'have tavitenu means the person doesn't have. So he comes to the taina of aniyus. So what happened is that Haman would see Mordechai, and Mordechai, so to speak, would have the wealth. Why have the wealth? Because he owned everything. Everything had to come his way. And he would be sitting there, and he would feel poor. And Mordechai would feel rich. And he was ashamed of him. And that's why he said, Kol ze inena shavali. It's all worthless. What do you mean it's not worth to me? It's not worth. In shavali, it's not worth to me, because whatever I own, as the Gemara says, Kol ma she'eved kana eved, kana rabbi. Whatever a slave acquires, the slave has no jurisdiction. Who acquires it? The master acquires it. So the master acquires it. So Haman says, all these things I own are not really mine. If Mordechai owns me. And therefore he felt threatened. And because he felt threatened, Amar of Papa, the Papa says, V'karolei, they would call, people would mock Haman behind his back, and they would call him Avda the Mizban Betalmei. They would say, the servant who was sold for a couple of loaves of bread. The loaf of bread servant. Rashi says, Betulmei Nahama, Bekikres Lechem, loaves of bread. Esrim Lechem Sa'irim, there were 20 loaves of barley bread, and it's elsewhere in the book of Kings, in Melachim Beis it says Mitagmin, and Esrim Tulmin the Lachma. Over there it translates 20 loaves of bread as tulma. So the word tulma in Aramaic comes from the terminology of bread, and therefore that's why Haman felt that he was his dignity was robbed. He felt somehow impoverished. He felt poor. He felt lost, because if Mordechai's here, he'll never have a good day. And who knows? Mordechai could go to court. He can demand the money. He can always use he has the documentation. So the Yalkut Shimoni actually has the story in much, much more detail. And the Gemara says like this. The Yalkut Shimoni says. It reads very much like the Gemara, but the Yalkut Shimoni adds the following words. Hainu the Amr le Mordechai le Haman. This is what Mordechai would often say to Haman. Avda de kana nichsi. If a servant acquires residuals, avda de man. Nichsi de man. Whose servant is he? Whose residuals are they? So Mordechai threw it in his face. Mordechai was like an in-your-face kind of guy. He didn't play games. So when Haman would come and Haman would try to lord over Mordechai, this would Mordechai throw back at him. The Yalkut Shimoni, the details of the story, if you want to know some more details, is Pa'am Achas, says the Yalkut Shimoni, Nosan HaMelech Momen. The king gave an enormous amount of money. V'shigron b'roshei gaisus. He sent Mordechai and Haman, who were, I guess, young, budding individuals who had tremendous potential, and he sent them off at the heads of legions. Lichbesh Hamadina, to go capture a particular province. Natal Haman Maman Shalei va'achlei. Haman spent all his money. Linishtayel he had no money left. When he came to provide for his troops, he couldn't provide for them because the money was gone. He had spent in a wild way. But Mordechai was judicious. Mordechai was spending carefully, and therefore, because of his judicious spending, he still had to have the money. He had to have the funds still with him. Ba Haman, so Haman came as a Mordechai. Amar lei, he said, Leveini mamen zeh shebiyadcha, loan me this money. So Mordechai said back, Amar lei, ein ani malva elam kein timker nafshcha le'evedli. I will not loan you the money unless what you'll do is sell yourself as a slave to me. Kibel nafshi, I had no choice. Because if the king would find out that he didn't have any money and his troops died because he was a spendthrift, because he behaved wildly, he would get into trouble. He would be hung. Because of Loi, he wrote, Harei Haman Avdei Shel Mordechai. Behold, Haman is the servant of Mordechai. Zoven Nafshel Mordechai Betulma Denama. He sold his soul to Mordechai for a loaves of bread. So actually he wanted money, according to Yaakov Shimoni. But the money was for provisions. So he said he sold himself for provisions. He sold himself for loaves of bread. So now you understand a little bit of what's really going on here. Besides his anti-Semitism, this was the basis of his hatred. That's why he couldn't stand Mordechai another second, because he had all the success. But I said, I can't enjoy my success. It's never even mine. Now, in truth, Mordechai had no intention of ever trying to, so to speak, pull the cord. He had no intention of breaking the glass. He had no intention of using this. Probably would never hold up. If a Jew came with all the documentation of the world, it wouldn't help very much. I recently found out a very interesting story about my grandfather's grandfather, who came to the United States in 1881. A long time ago, right? So what happened was, he was a very successful business person. He lived in a Polish town called Shinova. And he loaned money to a local squire. A lot of money. And then, when it came time to pay, the local squire didn't want to pay. And he demanded, he had documentation, took him to court. So the local squire got the military and the police after him. So it was a question of who was going to get him first. Both the military, he paid off the military and the police. Here's this Jewish guy, young Jewish boy, and they're out to get him. His name was Megillat Esther. So he went into hiding. But you can't, how long can you hide for? The police were looking for him and the army. He had all the legal documents. The guy owed him the money. So he went to the Shinoverov. It was the eldest son of the Tzanzerov, who became like a Rebbe, even before his father passed away. And he said to the Shinover, what should I do? I mean, he had a wife, I think, and 2 children at the time. What should I do? So the Shinover said, so let's put him in America. Escape to America, go to America. So there was a sheikhet of Shinova was there, and he heard that the Shinoverov is giving permission for an observant Jew to go to America. No observant Jew went to America. They say that the East River is full of tefillin and Shabbos candles. Golden and Medina, goodbye Yiddishkeit. Shinoverov gives him he says, can I get in America? I want to get away from Poland. The Shinoverov said, nein. Wird bleiben a frum Marid. He'll remain an observant Jew. And du wirst bleiben. And you'll remain. Well, so Melech escapes. He goes to America. And he couldn't come back to Poland anymore. But his wife's parents were not very happy about the situation. And he was sending letters to his wife, and they were hiding the letters. And at a certain point, his wife wasn't responding to him anymore. The guy started going crazy. He said, "Do you want me to divorce you? Like, where's this going to go?" That letter they showed. A divorce all of a sudden. And then she found out they hid all the letters. So there was this huge kerfuffle, a huge fight. And she left her parents, and she went to be with her husband, with 2 children. And they had a 3rd child in America. And that 3rd child in America is my great-grandfather. His name was Shia Hecht. That's my Zaydi's father. Then Herr Shmelech, who was my grandfather's grandfather, brought his father to America. Somewhere in the 1890s. So, and he's buried in Brooklyn, him and his wife. His name was Ephraim Fischel, and his wife Drezel. They're actually buried in Brooklyn. So I have 7 generations that lived in North America, all remain from. It's like an amazing thing. Anyway, why am I telling you this story? It's the same kind of thing. What was Mordechai, right? With a big target on his back. Mordechai was going to go and take Haman to court. Like, exactly how well would that go? The next day, the witnesses' cars would blow up. It would never work. Who's going to be on the jury? Yeah. It's not going to work. Mordechai knew he couldn't do anything about this. So really, Haman's fear was unreasonable. But Haman's not reasonable. Fear and hatred easily mingle. And so Haman hated Mordechai, and he said, I feel like he owns me. Doesn't matter if he can't execute his documentation. Doesn't matter that he won't do anything. Still, I couldn't stand his very existence. And this has been the case many times, With Jewish people who had documentation, they owed the money, but you weren't going to be collecting. And of course, you never collected. As a result of that money that was never paid back, His whole family was saved. He stayed in Europe, they all would have been killed. So Hashem has strange ways of working, and that's how Hashem decided this family will be saved, and that family came across. Now you have an understanding of what went on over here. This is what was driving Haman. This is what it was all about. This is why Haman is in this terrible rage, and he wants Mordechai dead yesterday. Now, I'll add you one more little detail before we go further into Zeresh's advice. So, let's go first to the Gemara. So the Gemara goes on to say like this. In the Megillah it says, V'chol zeh einenu sheveli. All this is worthless for me. This is Daf Tezvav on page 15b. Why does it mean all this is worthless for me? So the Gemara says, V'omar Rebbe Lezer says, Omar Rebbe Chanina. What did it mean when he said all this is worthless for me? No, sorry, I skipped. This teaches us that all the wealth of Haman was engraved on his heart. When he sees Mordechai sitting there, he says, Amar kol zeh. He pointed to what was engraved on his heart. Kol zeh, because the word zeh in Hebrew, especially in biblical syntax, always means this. So what's zeh? What's that? Kol zeh. All his wealth, all his children, all his fame. What's the kol zeh? So the Gemara says that he had this very, very beautiful diamond, incredibly like one of these $1 million diamonds or something that he wore around his neck, and the Tosfos Chachmei Anglia add that the diamond was either engraved with or in the shape of his palace. The idols were on his brocades, on his robes, or his palace, or the place where he had his safe keeping all of his money. Fabulous, wealthy person, a billionaire. So he had this people have certain homes, have an image, it's like an outline or whatever. So Haman had this outline of his residuals. It was recognizable. You see some of those organizations on the stationery, they put it like a picture of the building or something like that. So Haman had this building, like the White House. The White House has an image. The Kremlin has an image. Buckingham Palace has an image. So this image is shape, and it was recognizable. London Tower has an image. You look at it, and in a moment. It's a landmark thing. So Haman's home, his compound, was a landmark. And that was symbolic of all of his wealth. And therefore, he pointed all this, meaning his residuals, his compound, all his money was hidden, all this, and in a sheveli. It's worth nothing as long as that guy is alive. As long as he's still sitting over there, B'shar HaMelech, I can't take it. It's impossible for me to swallow this. I can't, so to speak, continue to live. The Ma'am Loyas uses the words, I can't wait until the 13th of Adar. Shalay yiskalkel tam chayav. He spoils the taste of life for me. You see, the food gets rotten, the milk is the taste of life. I can't even enjoy. I can't taste all the things I have as long as that man is still alive. Okay, Haman's made his case. But this is a little bit of recapping from previous classes, which brings us now to the final verse of chapter 5. Okay, you have the dramatic music playing. What will Zeresh respond? So Zeresh is a very, very smart lady. Haman was smart to trust his wife, and he knew that she's very, very wise. Oh, 1 second. Before we go on to one last Yalkut Shemani, before we go on to Zeresh's thing. Haman says, when he talks about the fact that he was brought, Vayemer Haman, af, lohevi Esther hamalka melech elamishta, which now literally translates, where af means kind of like but, or nobody else. Oh, nobody else. How does it translate af over here? Even. No, even, in addition to everything else, not only this, even the party, I'm the only one there. So Yalkut Shemani says like this. Pivich shilei. This is an instance of sometimes where a wicked person's mouth trips him up. In other words, Haman said something without realizing what he was saying. And he says, af. What's with af? So the Yalkut Shemani notes that in the Bible, there are 4 examples of villainous individuals who end up getting their just desserts and they begin their statement with af, where their concluding argument starts with af. And the first one that the Yalkut Shimoni mentions is the Sar HaOifen, the butler. There was the baker and the butler. So the baker said, after he heard Yosef interpret the butler's dream, he said, afani b'chaloimi. And what happened? V'nitzlav. He was hung. What happened to Haman? He was hung. And now, Amar Reb Chanina bar Papa, so the Yalkut Shimoni says, Reb Chanina bar Papa said, Arba heim shepaschu ba'af. There are 4 people in the length and breadth of biblical history who opened their final closing argument with af. Who are they? The Nachash, the primordial snake, who has his life spoiled forever. Sar HaOifim, the baker. Koirach, the man who rebelled against Moshe Rabbeinu. And finally, Haman. Nachash Minayin, the Nachash said, Afki Omar. He said, Afki Omar. He said, Afki Omar. So we'll see what that Afki Omar lands us. The Sar HaOifim said, as we mentioned, Afani b'chaloimi. Koirach said to Moshe Rabbeinu in his closing arguments against Moshe, Af loyal eretz zavas chalav advash. Also with Af. And finally Haman said, Af lehivia Esther. She didn't bring anybody else. Nobody else. Just me. Just me. So that Af was pivich shiloi. We don't see the miracles happening yet, but his mouth caused him to trip. Anyway, that's what a sage is saying. Zeresh's response. Vatoimer loy Zeresh ishtoi. Zeresh, his wife, and from this we understand Zeresh, his wife, the one who worried about him, who cared about him, who loved him, was concerned for him, maybe not wisest, but for sure cared most about him. And because when you really care about somebody, anybody can be a genius. You have to really care about it. Right? Like, if you really care, if it's really important to you, you can think of a brilliant idea. And she does think of a brilliant idea. Zeresh starts to say, and I mentioned this previously, in a previous class, quoting the Medrash. Now I'm going to quote the Targum Sheni, which gives us different details, and then there's even more details. There's a number of Midrashic traditions, all similar ideas, but mentioning with different names mentioned. So Zeresh says to Haman, we really have to do this carefully, because he's Jewish, right? So the Jews have like they went with the devil. They somehow get away with things. We have to proceed very carefully if we're going to be able to achieve success here. So Zeresh said, look, she said, fire is not going to work. Nura leiseichel. You're not going to be able to use fire. Why? The Ishtev mine Avram, because Avram Avinu was saved from a fire. This goes back to the beginning of time. So fire is not going to work. Okay, if it can't be by fire, what should we do? Use the sword. He said, Seifel leiseichel. You're not going to be able to use the sword because Ishtev mine Yitzchak. Yitzchak had a sword raised against him. He was saved. So, no fire, no sword. What do we say next? Water. He says, Maya letechel. You're not going to be able to knock him out with water because Ishtezivu minayin Moshe. Moshe Rabbeinu himself was saved from the water when he was a baby placed in the basket. And Bnei Yisrael, the Jewish people, saved in the Reed Sea. Fire no good, sword no good, water no good. All right, what was a favorite pastime of the ancients? When you don't like somebody, every good king, monarch, prince had himself a nice little den full of lions or wild animals. This was starve the animals, which is cruel to the animals, but who cares about that? And then every once in a while reward them with a person, a hapless individual, their victims who were thrown in and torn to pieces. He says, goy varoyo, so they have this lion's den. Loi teichol, it's not going to work because Ishteve minei Daniel will say from that. What should you do? He says, Beram avid zekef chamishim ama. You put up a wood, a pole, 50 amas high, and in the morning you'll tell the king to hang him, and he'll be hung, and everything's going to work out. Now there's another version that the Ma'am Lois brings down from a different medrash, and that is, what's the other thing you do? Fire, water, sword. The goy varoyos is like the execution method. Wash your hands. You don't have to do it yourself. The animals do it for you. What's the other thing? Other thing we didn't mention. We didn't mention prison. So he says that's not going to work, because if it's prison, the Jewish people were like in prison in the desert. It's like a prison, and they lived there 40 years. So he says maybe you should mutilate him. Don't try any of those things. Just mutilate him, and then he won't be able to function. Shimshon. Very good. He says, you mutilate him, you're going to gouge his eyes out? That didn't work with Shimshon. In the end, Shimshon knocked them all down. So she went through Jewish history. She's a very smart lady. By the way, some of the Nazis were very learned also. They knew about Jewish history. The Nazis had a favorite pastime. In many of the concentration camps, on Purim, they would hang 10 Jews publicly. Yeah, this was a big thing for them. They would celebrate Purim, Rahman al-Sam. So this is Zeresh's idea. She said, nothing else is going to work. The gallows. That's going to work. 50 amas high, she says. Yasa Eitz will make a gallows that's going to be 50 amma, 50 amas high. Uva boiker, and in the morning, Emer lemelech will tell the king, the Yislu Haman alav, we're going to string Mordechai up on it. Yislas Mordechai. Uvoy im hamelech ala mishta, then you'll come to the mishta, and you'll be someach, you'll be happy, you'll be toivleiv, you'll be in a good mood. Everything's be beautiful. Done. Wash your hands. Finish yourself. Finish off all the grief and all the aggravation. The vexing problem of Mordechai the Jew will be no longer. Haman listens and he begins to smile. Vayita vadavar. He likes it. This is good. Vayas ha'etz. And so they make the large wood.
But it's for sure that the Melech will agree to
This you ask good questions. How does Haman know Achashverosh is going to agree? And first they make the gallows, and then you ask the questions? Shoot first, ask questions later? It doesn't work like that in a monarchy. That's sedition. There's a lot of funny things going on over here. A lot of things have to be understood over here. So first of all, the Ma'amaloyas, the Yaakov Shemaini tells us that when it came to making this wood, this big beam, they couldn't find the beam that big. 50 amos is a very, very high, long piece of wood. Where do you find a 50 amma? An amma is 18 inches. And that's a conservative estimate. It could be even more. It could be a liberal, it could be, according to some opinions, it could be as many as 24 inches. Which could be up to 100 feet, 75 feet or 100 feet long. It's a very long, in meter, I think it's 25 to 50 meters long. That's a very long piece of wood. So, where do you get a piece of wood like that? You got to cut down a redwood tree or something. Like it's a straight piece of wood like that, and you need it now. Where are you going to find that? It's a problem. So the Yalkut Shemaini says, Haman starts looking for this 50 cubit pole. V'loi matzah, couldn't find it. They got on the phone. It's the middle of the night, They called all the lumber stores. Nobody has lumber like that. They went online. Lumbers are us. Nothing doing. Comes back. Whoever he could. It's the middle of the night. Remember, this is a specialty item. How do you get it manufactured? You have to manufacture tonight. It's got to get manufactured because tomorrow morning we're going to hang him because he's got to come to the party seeing Mordechai hanging already and being in a good mood. There's no time to order a specialty item. Then what are they going to do? He says, okay, give it 50 cube word. Get a 3-month wait for that. Are you kidding? He's going to do this now. Where's he going to find this? It's a problem. So Yalkut Shemaini says they looked and they couldn't find. But there was one gigantic beam of wood in Haman's own home. He was ready to dismantle his own home. Where did he get that wood from? This is amazing. Parshandasa, who was the son of Haman, he had been appointed governor in a province known as Cordonia, which is just west of Kurdistan today. This is the area today that is primarily controlled by the PKK. These are the Turkish rebels, the Kurds who are rebelling against the Turkish government, who Erdogan Yamachshmai is trying to destroy them. They live in the area, the mountainous area they live in is known as the mountains of Ararat. Till today, those mountains are known as Ararat. What was Ararat? Noach's Teva. He was in this place. He found the Teva of Noach. He took a beam from Noach's Teva and he brought his dad a gift. How long was those boards of wood? 50 amma. How incredible is this? Talk about layers of history. Why was this? HaKadosh Baruch Hu made a zikaron, says the Yalkut Shemaini, so that all nations will know that there was once a Mabul. And for many, many centuries, people would still come and look at this giant ark, this big floating barge. Incidentally, there was a Christian archaeologist about 25, 30 years ago who set out to find the ark. His name is Wendell Jones. He's passed away since. The mythical Hollywood figure, Indiana Jones, is based on the person of Wendell Jones. He's a real guy. He actually was looking for the ark. He's a very, very strong, believing Christian, and he went looking for biblical archaeology. And he did find the ark, and there's a movie about it. You can go, he has a documentary that he made, only by the time he wanted to return, then all of a sudden the PKK was in full-blown rebellion, and the Turkish government shut him down. This is before Erdogan. At that time, Turkey was still a more or less Western country, an open country, but it would not allow him to go in that territory, and now nobody's allowed to go. It's a forbidden area. Basically, what he discovered is he found the measurement is royal cubits, which is our amma. He found that what seems that there was a volcano at some point, and in the force of the lava, the teva broke in half. And half of it is down the mountain, lodged down the mountain. It's petrified. It's 4,000 years old. And part of it is still stuck on top of the mountain. But when he went over it with something that looks for metal, a metal detector, they were able to detect pegs on a regular, across the petrified wood. They could detect that there was metal, but you can't extract the actual metal. But they actually saw, he documented this, like every so-and-so, I don't remember the amount of space, but there was on regular intervals, which is indicative of building. And the measurements line up, and it is a box, it's a square. So for a long time, the teva was actually visible. People actually saw the teva. And they didn't challenge the history of the Bible because they saw it. And the Yaakov Shimoni says, when Sodom was turned over, it also became a zichron olam. It says Lot's wife turned around, and that was a pillar of salt, and that pillar of salt remained there. And for a very long time, people knew where that pillar of salt is. Today, every time you go with a different tour guide, they put to a different mountain and say, there's Lot's wife. Okay, fine. There's even people who made sculptures called Lot's wife. The Jordanians say Lot's wife is on the Jordanian side. We say, whatever, we don't know where it is now. We lost the tradition. But for a long time, we did have that tradition. And here, the Yaakov Shimoni finishes off also with the similar words of the Medrash, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but a little sharper. She said, Zeresh, Mikol Davar HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yochel. God can, He has ability with everything. He could save Avram from fire, He could save Yitzchak from the Akedah, He could save Yaakov from the Malach, which you don't mention. It's a different Medrash, Yaakov from the Malach. Moshe from the sword. Interesting, different version, because Moshe Rabbeinu had the sword of Yisrael min Hayam, which is from water. So we have a little bit different order over here. We have fire, we have Akedah, just like, Akedah, which maybe, I don't know how you want to design that, like a turning family against each other, or Yaakov and the Malach. But he says the one thing God can't stop is hanging, because He never did that. So this Zeresh is so wicked. She said, here's where we found God's weak point. We found His underbelly. Hanging. He's not going to be able to stop him. So we have to find this enormous pole. But why was Zeresh thinking to find this enormous pole to begin with? This is something that everybody is perplexed by. 50 amas, 100 feet. A man is like 6 feet.
So everybody can see.
So the David Feinstein asks a very good question. He says, we have a Gemara in the beginning of Masechah Sukkah that says that the schach of the sukkah can't be too high. And the Gemara gives 3 reasons. One of the reasons why is, can't be more than 20 amot. Why can't it be more than 20 amot? Because 20 amot, le'sholta be'ena, says the Gemara. The eye doesn't notice it. It's not within eye shot. So he says clearly, from the Gemara it seems, that after 20 amos, the eye doesn't see it. We have the same halacha in Hilchas Eruvin, with regard to the various mechanisms we would make to seal off a cul-de-sac, to make it a private domain for Shabbos, that you put something called a koira. You put a marker on the outside, which indicates that this is a private area, creating a demarcation between it and the public domain, and if it's higher than 20 amas, it doesn't work. It's like way up there, nobody notices it. So David says, many of the Farshim say what you're saying. They'll say, it should be seen from afar. But if David asks, it shouldn't be 20 amas then. It shouldn't be 50, it should be 20. 20 is beyond people could see. Now with regard to the idea of seeing it, this was actually a very old practice that continued all the way until the 19th century. There was an instance here in Canada. It's called gibbeting. When a person would be executed by the government, they would hang the person. the famous pirate Blackbeard, was gibbeted, and he hung in the harbor, in London harbor, for something like 10 years. Gibbeting means you hang the body up. You know why you do it? To scare the heebie-jeebies out of everybody. And this is what will happen if you'll be a pirate. And only when they hung the pirates up and left their bodies there, they used to encase them. Had metal rings around them, and left their bodies rotting for a decade. People would, the stench was unbelievable, and the sight was horrific, and it scared the heck out of people.
And the birds won't come.
The birds won't come? I think the birds do come. Yeah, but that's exactly the point. This is a method of scaring people, frightening people, getting the word out. So the Mefarshim say Haman wanted right in the morning. The Malbim says first thing in the morning. Why first thing in the morning? He says as soon as people wake up in the morning, it should happen. It should happen in the middle of rush hour. Everybody should see Mordechai being pulled all the way up there. And then everybody will see him hanging. And what will this show? Don't mess with Haman. Nobody messes with the king's prime minister. And Haman...
It has happened with hung people and they haven't died.
Excellent point. Very good. So, actually, some of the Mefarshim say that the reason that it has to be 50 is because there was a rule in Persia. And many countries have had this rule, that if the rope rips, you go free. So this is a problem. If the rope's going to rip, then Mordechai might go free. After all, we're very worried about him getting lucky. So the Ma'am Loyes quotes the Maharash, Dana Pshara, Eni Ha'eda, a number of other Mefarshim. He says that there was this rule that if Nikra HaChevel, that's it, Nechon HaNitla. Rips, you're off. So they said to Haman, make it 50 amos high. Why? If the rope doesn't kill him, the fall will kill him. Sincerely guaranteed. You're falling 3 stories. So therefore, as we guaranteed he dies, but don't take chances. And this is why Zeresh, this is a very logical reason. Zeresh was very worried for her husband. She said, these Jewish people, the devil's with them. We got to make sure somehow their God is always there saving them. Find the one way, but their God can help them. And, our luck, the rope is going to rip. Let him die before the fall. Just make sure he dies. That's like a very logical reason. Now, the Medrash says that night, they got right away to work. Haman didn't even get undressed. He was still wearing his tie. He was still wearing his formal attire. And right away, bring the workers in. You imagine this, middle of the night. They didn't even have like cell phones. I don't know how to get workers in the middle of the night. Bring the workers in the middle of the night. And everybody started working to build this gallows. So it shouldn't be fall, it should be solid. It should be, get to remove this beam from the house, set the beam up. It says, Banav Shel Haman, the children of Haman were there whistling away and banging with the hammers. And it was a whole family event. And Zeresh, the monstrous, she came out with her musical instruments. And she was playing musical instruments, like these fake Estinian monster moms who come out after their children kill people, and they give out sweets. So she was preparing for the death of the enemy. She came out now with music, and she was giving out candy, giving pastries out to all the guests. They invited the guests of it, a block party. Everybody could come to the Hamanic compound, and she kept saying, I'm paying. This is my treat. I pay all the bills tonight. She had her own bank account. Not saying all the bills tonight. And Baruch HaMishta, she made a great big feast. Now,
Why
this...
it says
Vayasa eitz, because they had...
He did it.
Huh?
He made it.
Vayasa means that it was more like it was done. But really it was like by Haman's decree. It was by Haman's order. Now, of course, this is a very dangerous thing to do, because Haman is building a governmental kind of punishment, a punishment for the king. It's not for him, right? He's building on private property. Why is he doing it on private property? Because he can't go and build on a public property without permission from the king. But on the other hand, he's afraid to wait till tomorrow. He's got to be in a good mood by the time the meal comes around. He can't come to the meal with a sour face. As one of the Mefarshim say, how could you come to the meal with the king and the queen and you be miserable? You have to come happy. So you have this duty. As a duty, okay, you have a duty, you have to do this. So therefore, Haman was a little bit nervous about this. He was afraid. And they said to him, don't you worry. You'll see. The king loves you. It'll work out. It'll work out. So the king, you're a little nervous about this, but you'll see that the king is happy enough with you. You'll tell him everything's prepared already, and he'll say, go for it. So he took a big risk. Haman takes a big risk here, and of course this is his undoing. This big risk. Everything gets undone from here. Some of the commentaries point out that this was all min hashemayim. All min hashemayim. Why? That it should be 50 amos high. So the next night, when Achashverosh would hear that Haman wants to kill the queen, when Esther finally pulls the trigger, it says Achashverosh is fuming. He gets up and he goes for a walk in the garden. And then he comes back in, and what does he see? He sees Haman basically on top of Esther, begging for her life. And then he goes ballistic. He goes nuclear. You want to seduce the queen of my own house? And all of a sudden, Chavarna shows up just at the right time. Who we have a tradition is Daniel. And Chavarna says, Your Majesty, not only this, your loyal Mordechai, who you didn't reward, he wants to build a gallows for him. And they look out the window, and he says, that's the gallows, 50 feet high. Haman didn't live next door. That's 50 feet high. It was a tall gallows. He said, gallows, that's the gallows right there. And it says, you can't compare hearing to seeing. When Achashverosh saw the gallows, he said, he wants to hang my Mordechai on those gallows? Let him go ahead. Let him hang. He says that everything was all the way of Hashem. Everything just had to happen in the right time, the right place, in the right way, and everything comes together. So, and this, again, more interesting ideas about why it has to be 50 amos high. The Alshich, he comes along and he says, there is this explanation that later the gallows, this big beam, was cut into 10 pieces. Why did it have to be cut into 10 pieces? Because Haman was hung, and then after we had to hang all of Haman's children. So he said it worked at just enough space to make, out of this gallows, Achashverosh said, that gallows, that's the gallows his family is going to hang from. So they made a whole series of gallows. Haman and his 10 sons hung from all that. But he says, but what were they thinking? That's how it works out in the end. What were they thinking? There's got to be some kind of other reason. So the Alshich suggests that this is something to do with black magic and the forces of Klippa, forces of Tumah. He said, we know that there are 50 gates of purity, 50 gates of holiness. Right? It's called Chamishim Sha'arei Bina. And that's where the Jewish people count down 49 days, and then the Torah is given on the 50th. But there's also 50 gates of the opposite, of impurity. And it says when the Jewish people were in Mitzrayim, they came to the 49th gate of impurity. Had they entered into the 50th gate, they would be irretrievable. So Zeresh, who's this Nazi Kabbalist, who knows like this Jewish mysticism and knows about all these forces and so on and so forth, she designs in her mind a gallows that should transcend the number 49, which represents the full gamut of human effort in serving Hashem. And says we got to take him to the 50th. Once we go to the 50th, then we have nothing else to worry about. The Mamloyas also says that Zeresh was concerned that Mordechai himself was a sorcerer. This is like the old age canon against Jews. The Jews have horns, the Jews drink blood, the Jews are sorcerers. He has black magic, and Mordechai's going to do. So he said you have to hang him, because the only way a sorcerer has power is if his feet are on the ground. They got to be plugged in. So therefore, get his feet off the ground. Get him as high up as possibly can. If he's high up, that way we'll neutralize whatever power that he might have. There's a very interesting medrash that connects this business of the eights, which we're going to have. He would have had Mordechai swing from. Right? It says, make yaso eitz gavaya chamishim amma, and va'emer lamelech ba'boikar emer, in the morning you'll tell the king, as if he's going to tell the king. That's what they told him. You'll tell him. You'll see. You'll tell him. And then v'yislos Mordechai, they're going to hang Haman, Mordechai. And then you can come. You can be happy. You'll enjoy life. You'll be able to participate in the party. You'll feel good about yourself. So the Medrash says that God said that this gallows, this eitz, will not be. Why? Avram came first already. What did Avram do? Avram said to the angels, who he thought at the time were nomads, he said to them, V'hishanu tachas ha'etz. And then there's the business with Moshe Rabbeinu, that God instructs him with regard to the wood. So it was a business with eitz weiter. So here we have a story with eitz. So the eitz of Moshe, the eitz of Avram Avinu precedes the eitz. Eitz is wood. So the Rebbe in a Maimer, he asks a question: what is the connection between Avram Avinu's tree and Haman's? What's the connection? It doesn't seem to make any sense. Especially, we just said this wood was harvested or chopped down before Avram Avinu was born. So it's from Noach's Teva. It's like eights, like a wood here, wood there. Like you're just like connecting pieces of wood from across history that have nothing to do with each other.
Also, Beit HaMikdash was built in wood.
Mishkan.
Mishkan first?
Mishkan.
Yeah.
Not Beit
That's
HaMikdash.
right.
Beit HaMikdash doesn't allow to have any wood. So the Medrash Seichel Tev says like this. The Medrash Seichel Tev, when Avram Avinu said, V'yishanu tachas ha'etz, it says ha'etz, the wood. What's the tree? Later on we see that Avram Avinu plants a tree. Vayita Eshel, plants a tree. So what's so famous about this Eshel? That wood that was planted by Avram Avinu in Beersheba, which I guess the Medrash somehow connects to the wood that was in Hebron, which may be transplanted from Hebron to Beersheba. What happens to that tree? What happens to that orchard? It's tended by Yitzchak, and then later tended by Yaakov. And when they're leaving Mitzrayim, the last stop is Beersheba. And what do? They take these trees, and especially ha'etz, that wood, and they bring that wood into Mitzrayim, and they planted a forest. And this forest of acacia wood grew in the land of Mitzrayim. And when a young child would cry to his father or mother, what's ever going to happen to us? Is there any hope for us? The parents would take, like the Rebbe once said, the parents would take the children to this forest and say, you see this forest? This forest is planted by our great-grandfather Yaakov. And this wood, we're going to leave Mitzrayim with this wood. And they did. They didn't really know why, but they had this tradition that Yaakov came with wood, and you have to leave with wood. Especially ha'etz. There was the main tree, which was Avram's tree. What happened with that wood? When it says the Jewish people were in the desert, and God said to build a Mishkan, He said to build it of acacia wood. So where are we going to get wood from? Where was that wood from? That was the wood that Avram planted, that Yitzchak tended, that Yaakov uprooted and replanted, that the Jewish people watched grow. That wood, which was the hope of the children of Israel during their depths of their degradation and their sorrow and their anguish and agony, that same wood became the Mishkan which housed the Shekhinah. Now, what about the wood? What about ha'etz? What about the fulcrum, the central tree of Avram Avinu? That main wood, there was a miraculous beam, a cross beam. It says all of the wood, there was these boards of wood, and the boards of wood were lashed together, and then there was a central beam that went through all the three walls of the Mishkan, all the way down the one side, and then it miraculously turned, and then it came all the way back. So it was like in the shape of a ches. That wood, that miraculous wood, that was ha'etz. That was Avram's tree. That was the tree that the angel sat under. So the Rebbe says that the bending of the beam, the bending of the beam in the Targum Yenus ben Uzziel, it says this was similar to the Nachash, to the original snake. Original snake. What was the original snake? That's the one who got Chava and then Adam to sin. So the original snake has a counterweight. What's the counterweight of the original snake? What's the counterweight of the forces of Klippa? Because everything has Zeh, Lo'uma Zeh. Everything has a counterweight. What's the counterweight of the snake? Hagam Yenison says, this tree of Avram. So the Rebbe says, Haman, spiritual root, comes from the Nachash HaKadmoni, which is pretty interesting because we just in the Alkut Shemaini, we just said Af, right? The first one who said Af was the Nachash. The last one who says Af is Haman. It's the end of the story. So therefore, Haman comes, and he's trying to neutralize. He is using the forces of Klippa, like we just said. Like Al-Shach says, 50 gate of impurity. So when we have Avram Avinu's alter ego to this, Avram Avinu's antidote. What's an antidote? This is the Eshel. Klippa represents the height of selfishness, and Kedusha is the height of selflessness. What did Avram Avinu do? He fed his guests. Who were they? The lowest dregs of society, worshipping dust at their feet. Avram didn't care. Avram represents the height of holiness, and Haman and Amalek represent the height of Klippa. So they came with the force of Klippa. And Mordechai, a descendant of Avram Avinu, comes with the force of Kedusha. And so the stage is now set. The stage is set. Everything is ready to happen. And really now at this point, there is no time anymore. There is no time. There's no time for Esther to wait anymore, although she doesn't know it. There's no time for God to wait anymore. Now, because in a few hours, unless something happens right now, in a few hours Mordechai is going to be swinging from the trees. And once Mordechai is swinging from the tree, it's over. Without a Rebbe, the Jewish people will never get out of this. They're not going to do this out of Moshe Rabbeinu. It says, the Medrash says, Mordechai b'dayrei, ke Moshe b'dayrei. This is like a Moshe Rabbeinu, a Moses figure. Without a leader, without Moses, we couldn't get out of Mitzrayim, right? Vayaminu b'Hashem Moshe Avdei. We need to have that Moshe Rabbeinu. We need to have that Rebbe. It's not going to happen. And right now, Haman is planning the final hours of Mordechai. It's the middle of the night. They're working through the night. At dawn, Haman is about to hang Mordechai. This is a very suspenseful moment. What will happen? How will this end? And that is why the 5th chapter, right in the middle of the Megillah, that's why here it comes really up to the brink. We're like at the edge of the cliff. And then we go into a new chapter. All of a sudden we start going the other way now. Everything's going to change. How will it change? How will God make this miracle? How will the whole story start to turn over? Oh, so this you have to stay tuned. And next week we'll begin the 6th chapter.